Welcome to Tone Talks. Welcome to Tone Talks. Welcome to Tone Talks. How's everybody doing today? This is Antonio Moore coming to you from Tone Talks. Appreciate you tuning in again today. You guys all saw the news that came from Donald Trump. That's atrocious what he said about NFL players, what he said that the owners should do in answer to a protest that only stand up to all of the black oppression that happens across this nation. I'm going to let Donald Trump say his own words, and then we'll come back and have a discussion.
And I and everyone in this arena tonight are unified by the same great American values. We're proud of our country. We respect our flag. Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired.
So this whole statement of getting the sons of bitches off the field that kneeled during the Star Spangled Banner are statements that Trump made in Huntsville, Alabama yesterday, and the reaction by NFL players has been nothing short of just offended. And I think that what we see is the NFL has caught in quite a conundrum because of how they dealt with the Kaepernick situation entirely incorrectly. Instead of dealing with the issue with some sense of sensitivity for the players, for Black America, they dealt with it in the best interest of white America who buys their merchandise. And now here we are. You know, I've written a couple pieces on the Kaepernick situation for the Griot, for Newsmax. But before I did those two pieces, which I'll show you in a second, I did one for Vice maybe 2 years ago. And I basically said that the NFL might be on its last leg. And I said that more so about the CTE issue and the breaking of black bodies. I want to pull it up right here for you on the football's war on the minds of black men. And I want to share a section from that because it gives you a context for, you know, I made a statement on Twitter earlier where I basically said that how you going to fire all the black NFL players? There won't be no NFL. But I want to give that a numerical context for those people who, you know, kind of want to know how many players are black, how many players are white, and what does this actually mean if we were to have a mass boycott by African American players on any given Sunday. And so, again, this piece you can pull up for yourself. Football's war on the minds of black men. African American males are only 6% of the United States population, but comprise nearly 70% of the players in the National Football League. When we focus on the sport's high collision positions, the number of African Americans playing by percentage rises substantially. Nearly 30% of white NFL players are kickers, punters, or quarterbacks, all positions that have a much lower chance of being involved in concussion-causing collisions. With nearly 1,200 of the NFL's 1,700 players being black, football's concussion problem is also clearly a racial problem. For decades, young black men have laid themselves on the line for a game which has given most of them very little back in exchange. They have risked their bodies and minds to make millions for universities and were compensated only with scholarships and the slim chance of an NFL contract. So how and why have families been tricked into sending so many young boys off to play this dangerous game? Black lives must matter on the field as well as on the streets. On television screens, the collisions of bodies in a football game appear to be almost beautiful. On the field, it's necessarily unbeautiful. The NFL's violence is brutal and raw. It has consequences too. While we may view players as superhuman, the pain they feel is real, as are the cost of those hits. NFL players risk short-term injury and long-term brain damage every time they suit up for a practice or a game. America must decide whether it can support a game with such clearly devastating effects. If we do in fact care, we'll need to turn off the television on NFL Sundays or demand that the sport change itself. That would mean a more honest research into brain trauma. That would mean more education and stricter protocols. It could even mean changing the way the game is played. It may ultimately mean the end of football as we know it. I said that 2 years ago on Vice Sports. Again, you can pull up the article, Football's War on the Minds of Black Men. But I always thought that football had a conundrum in that not only is the issue having to do with the physicality of it, But it also has to do with the reality of you're taking advantage of the fact that poor black men are doing this as an escape. So now football hits the wall when none other than Colin Kaepernick takes a knee and tries to make a statement using his platform. The problem is, and I brought this up before in context of the decadent veil, which is my concept that black celebrity covers up black poverty. You, as Kaepernick, are paid to calm down black America, calm down America to the reality of wealth inequality and the consequence of American history racially. You might not know that, like, actively, but on Sundays when they show that diversity in those commercials where everybody's hugging on NFL, NBA cares, or NFL gives back, they trying to make it seem like everything involving race was in the past. And I think it becomes quite an issue when you line that up with the number of black males incarcerated. When you line that up with video of Alton Sterling, of Philando Castile being shot down, of so many people like Eric Garner, Trayvon Martin. And you have this issue when Kaepernick takes a knee during none other than the Star Spangled Banner during America's sport, football. In a sense, you know, I'm going to say that I stand with Cap. But at the same time, football was never meant to be for protests. And that's the problem. The problem is that we consider this to be a platform to deal with politics when it never was designed for that. And they not playing. They not playing about shutting people down. A year ago, I said Cap may never play football again. I'm with him, but he may never play football again. And part of my theory was, you can't have the ringleader tell the crowd there is no bread. You know, you go back to gladiator times. Games were always used when you couldn't give aqueducts, when you couldn't give bread, to keep the population like calm. This is nothing new. So the advent of the NBA, the NFL, to calm the population down is nothing new. And I think that we've taken it to a height where we believe that they can be the answer to all of our political issues. And I feel like we try to line it up with Muhammad Ali, but Muhammad Ali wasn't part of no league. Boxing's way different. The institutions are designed to sell jerseys to white folk. You might say, oh, don't black folk buy jerseys. I just told you in the last video that black people have 2.6% of the wealth. White America controls 90% of the household wealth. They're the market. And I'm not dealing with feelings right now. I'm dealing with realities. And the reality is I stand with Cap, but Cap might have to stand on the sidelines with me. And I feel like the best way I can explain this is not just to use general statements. I did an article for the Griot. I actually did 2 of them on Kaepernick. I recommend you pick up both, but I'm particularly looking at the one that's titled, Kaepernick may never play football again for saying Black Lives Matter. Did that about a year and a half ago or so. And I want to share a section of that and get into it. I said, as I have stated before, sports today plays the role of a decadent veil, particularly in relation to covering the economic problems of the black community. A community in dire need of social equity has been sold on hooking its dreams on hoops and gridiron, leaving little room for anything else. Football's war on the minds of black men is real, and Kaepernick's protest and the league's reaction points it out in a real way. It becomes increasingly obvious when in a quarterback-hungry league, owners begin to look for any way out, including pointing to a vegan diet as a way to slip by the ire of its most conscious fans. That refers to, like, they were saying Kaepernick was light because he had a vegan diet. They were looking for any excuse not to sign this man. This man is a great quarterback, definitely better than many of the starting quarterbacks today. Just want to give that context. So when Kaepernick knelt during the NFL game, I knew his days were numbered. How can a league built on feel-good stories of overcoming the odds have a franchise quarterback pointing out the reality that hardly anyone overcomes the odds? When Kaepernick stated, I am not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color. To me, this is bigger than football, and it would be selfish on my part to look the other way. There are bodies in the street and people getting paid leave and getting away with murder. he also was standing up to a system built on ignoring the reality of race in our great nation. A system built on the chokeholds of Eric Garners of the world, rough rides in a paddy wagon experienced by all the Freddie Grays, and the untold stories of the Walter Scotts shot in the back while only trying not to go back to prison. Cap, when you stand up for these little issues, little white kids in suburban America can no longer hang your jersey next to the copy of the shield carried by Cap from the Avengers. You lose your status as a superhero when you become vocal, and you instead make yourself into a real problem for the money-making engine called the NFL. So, in this piece, what I'm basically saying is that I agree with Cap, but at the same time, this institution is not a platform for us to advocate for changes. It's part of the system of control. It's always been that way and always will be. We'll see what happens this Sunday. But I'll tell you right now, they not playing with them boys. I'll tell you right now, what Trump said is so disrespectful to African Americans, to African American players. But at the same time, these are people that get screamed at every day. When the last time you had a white person scream at you when you did your job wrong? Watch how the coaches talk to these players. You can check out my interview with Jared Page right here. I interviewed an NFL player about CTE, concussions, black protests, all of that. And you can check that out. He played for several teams. One of them was the Chiefs, I believe. Check that out when you get a chance. What I'm saying to you is, I think we have a context of agency right now in African American life that isn't altogether real. It isn't based on any data empirically. It isn't based on any bank accounts in reality. It's based on the idea that we can start our own leagues. I want to share with you a new book that just came out. Make sure you check it out. It's powerful. Color of Money is the name of the book. It did so many of the ideas of a black bank, because without a black bank ain't no black league. And what it explains is the reality that no matter what you do, because of the way this country is set up, you're going to need some white institutions, which will in the end gut any idea of black ownership. This book is called The Color of Money. You can see it right here. Pick it up when you get a chance. Just came out. I want to share a section with you to give context to what I'm saying to you right now. When the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1863, the black community owned less than 1% of the United States' total wealth. More than 150 years later, that number has barely budged. The Color of Money pursues the persistence of this racial wealth gap by focusing on the generators of wealth in the black community, black banks. Studying these institutions over time, Mirza Bardarian challenges the myth that black communities could ever accumulate wealth in a segregated economy. Instead, housing segregation, racism, and Jim Crow credit policies created an inescapable but hard to detect economic trap for black communities and their banks. Bardarian challenges the long-standing notion that black banking and community self-help is the solution to the racial wealth gap. These initiatives have functioned as a potent political decoy to avoid more fundamental reforms and racial redress. Examining the fruits of past policies and the operation of banking in a segregated economy, she makes clear that only bolder, more realistic views of banking's relations to black communities will end the cycle of poverty and promote black wealth. You know, I've made that argument before. You know, what I feel happens so often is that we look for predators to save us. People that are attached to predators, that are predators, that sell us overpriced tennis shoes, sell us jerseys we don't need, sell us Sprite for our body, and then we try to make them into like heroes. And I don't care if it's a white super capitalist or a black super capitalist. They all super capitalists. And I feel like in some ways, we're trying to blend everybody together when it's Cap who stood up. It's Cap who said this. That brings me to LeBron James. Mr. I ain't saying nothing about Tamir Rice. Mr. I don't think that I need to get all the information. Today he made a tweet and we took that tweet and we expanded it and attached it to Cap's hip. It ain't Cap. He said, this is a tweet in response to you know, the president, along with the whole instance of yesterday, also said that he not inviting the Golden State Warriors to the White House. Okay. LeBron puts a tweet out, "You bum, ask Stephen Curry 30. Already said he ain't going, so therefore ain't no invite. Going to the White House was a great honor until you showed up. This is my issue with that. It's just like, how do you take that and find the same words as what I just said Cap said? This is a statement about his people, the elite class of African Americans not going to the White House. It don't say nothing about poor blacks. It don't say nothing about police brutality. It don't say nothing about nothing. And for me, the reason why I say that is I look at what happened with Tamir Rice. When Tamir Rice was shot down, what did we hear from LeBron James? We heard, let me be specific. I'm gonna just let you hear it. For me, this is LeBron James' words when asked about Tamir Rice, because there was a call for him to sit out games in protest. There was no kneeling for LeBron. There was no sitting out for LeBron. The money had to continue. And so what we hear from LeBron is, for me, I've always been a guy who takes pride in knowledge of every situation that I ever spoke on. And to be honest, I haven't really been on top of this issue. So it's hard for me to comment. I understand that any lives that are lost, what we want more than anything is prayer and the best for the family for anyone. But for me to comment on this situation, I don't have enough knowledge about it. So a kid gets shot down in your community, you can't read an article to get some knowledge? So you can give a strong comment like you did here on this Stephen Curry not being invited to the White House? We up here taking people, putting them on pedestals, when we should be standing with Cap, when we should be standing with Eric Garner, when we should be standing with Trayvon Martin. And I think that we got to be honest about who we attach to this thing. Because when everybody sees a snowball come, they say just enough to get us all hyped up. Just enough. But if you read between the lines, they're not saying much at all. You know, when Tamir Rice was shot down, what we saw is that his mother said she was quite sad by the way that LeBron James reacted to this thing. And I was sad as well. So many African Americans should be enraged about the reality of what has happened as a result of this decadent veil. What Cap is doing is not only exposing police brutality, he's exposing the fact that this decadent veil relies on them not talking about things. Not talking about all the black men incarcerated. Not talking about black oppression. Don't nobody want to see no Negro that ain't happy play no game where they tackle each other to the ground. So let's get real about this thing. Let's start the dialogue. Let's not overread into statements and tweets and make demands that people stand up for us if they're going to stand up for us. Don't send no tweet. Do a video. Do a full documentary. Make a statement. Demand some policy. Go to the White House still. But go to the White House with a set of demands. I'll give them to you if you don't know what to say because you haven't read up on it. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Please subscribe to Tone Talks. Let's keep the dialogue going. Donate at tonetalks.org. We're going to keep the pressure on people. We're going to make sure that everybody is held accountable. And we're going to make sure that we stand up to Trump and stand with Cap. Thank you.